Hey, good morning and welcome back to Taylor Time Live. I'm your host, Seth Gladden, and today we've got a really good episode for you on the retail segment and what we think is going to happen, what's been going on recently with it, the changes that have taken place, and how to be successful in it. So we've got a good show coming up for you. Before we jump into it, though, I do just want to remind everyone it is Thanksgiving next week, so I want to say Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. And also it's so crazy how fast this year has gone. So despite everything, there are plenty of things to be thankful for, and we are definitely thankful for all of our partners, the associations we're with, and just want to thank all of you. So that being said, let's jump into today. I want to introduce our guests, and then we'll actually dive into the content. So with me in studio is Gary Scheidker, our Director of Tech Services. Gary, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yep. Always here, right?
Yeah.
Almost always. So good to have you. And then also joining us from Taylor is Shelly Ackerman, and she's joining remotely. Shelly, thanks for joining us. Shelly? I can't hear you. Hang on. Try that again.
Good morning, Seth. Thanks again for having me and for that warm welcome, reminding us that it is a thankful holiday season.
Yes, absolutely. It is. And I just want you to take just a moment. I know you have quite a bit of experience in retail. Shelly, would you mind telling us a little bit about your background and kind of involvement with retail over the years?
Happy to, thanks. I spent about 22 years with Armstrong Flooring, and probably my favorite job, I had a variety of jobs, but my favorite job was when I was a commercial strategic account manager working with major national retailers. So you think of, the big players, and that's where I really had some great success, and I learned a lot about the flooring segment. So I'm looking forward to this session today because it's definitely a passion of mine, whether it's on the work side or just being a consumer, because I'm a self-admitted good shopper.
Yeah, well, I think that's something we probably all identify as now and then. So, well, hey, thank you so much for being here. And we are excited to have your experience and expertise with us, and obviously so grateful that you're part of our team. So. Next up, we have Robert Varden, the Executive Director of CFI, who's joined us. Robert, thanks for being here today as well.
Thank you very much, Seth. It's always a pleasure to be here, my friend.
Looks like you've got a couple extra things to be thankful for this year. Maybe it appears you're in Belize.
I am.
That's awesome. So
I thought maybe by putting this desk behind me, it would camouflage it a little bit.
Yeah. You can't fool me. I see it. So, well, hey, Robert, do you mind just tell us in just a minute or so, kind of a little bit about CFI for anyone that's watching that may not be familiar with you guys or what you do?
Thank you, Seth. I appreciate that. Of course, again, we're a 28-year training, certifying, education body. Working with installers, training, certifying. And I got to tell you, Seth, right now it's exciting times. I mean, we just, as of this week, started our first class at a new school in Wichita. We just signed and formed a phenomenal partnership with the iPad guys over there, which are phenomenal to work with. Our long-term classes, as again, we've developed curriculum in, pretty much every surface. So whether it be resilient, ceramic, tile, wood, carpet, we have the ability to take a young kid that has no experience and turning him into a basic installer, to put him out in the field. So it's pretty exciting times, I got to say. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so grateful for the work that you and CFI do, because we all know the value of having trained installers and what that brings to literally the whole industry. So thank you again for that. And again,
we're extremely thankful for partnerships, partnerships like the one we have with Taylor and others. So we thank you as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we are excited about it as well. And then we have a special guest with us today, Joe Polito with TAJ Flooring. Joe, thank you so much for being here.
Good morning. Thanks for the invitation to participate. Looking forward to it.
For sure. Joe, do you mind just give us a little brief rundown of who you are, your history, and then a little bit about TAJ Flooring as well, what it is that you guys do, and how you're connected with retail?
Yeah, I'm a veteran of the flooring business of about 36 years. The first 20 years were on the carpet and soft surface side of the business. both in residential and commercial. And the last 16 years, I've been focused on hard surface, resilient to be exact. And it's just been crazy to experience the growth and the expanded use of resilient products and the diverse products in these segment-specific portions of the commercial retail market. I've been with TAJ Flooring for the last 8 years, and my main role is in product development and technical support. At TAJ is a family-owned resilient supplier based in Elgin, Illinois, just a far western suburb of Chicago. We've got warehouses in Illinois, California, and Pennsylvania. We have roughly 35 independent sales agents supporting A&D, commercial flooring contractors, and commercial end users throughout the country. And we operate in all commercial segments of the market, but by far and away, our largest volume of business is done in the retail end use segment. So we've got a little bit of experience to talk about in that regard.
Very good. Yeah, and that's exactly why we're excited to have you today. And clearly, I think your rundown there speaks for itself. So thanks again for being here with us. That being said, let's actually go ahead and start talking about retail. We've named today's segment Retail Segment Rebound. Whether that's a question or whether that's a statement, we will find out over the next hour, hopefully, and obviously over the next year as well. I do want to remind you, text your questions in. We will be answering those live. So that number that's there at the bottom, it's also, if you're watching online, it's right below in the description. You can find that text in number at any point. We do want to take your live questions. You can direct them just general, or you can direct them at a specific person as well that's on today. So that being said, Joe, I'm actually going to kick this back to you and just open it up. But can you do just take a few minutes and paint a picture for us of the retail segment and what has happened over the last, call it 18 months through COVID, supply chain, the things that have been going on. Give us a rundown of how that's been happening.
Yeah, it's been weird times, Seth. It's there was certainly a rough start in 2020, the Q2, when we had lockdowns and people were staying at home and doors were closed because they didn't quite know how to handle the pandemic. Everybody was very uncomfortable with the situation. And since then, we have experienced kind of a situation that we've never seen before. Retailers in building materials and grocery and fast food have grown at rates that have never been seen before. Retailers with established e-commerce programs have done very, very well. And as time has gone by and people have become more comfortable with the situation that COVID has brought upon us, we've seen a move back to the brick and mortar stores. And I think that there's always going to be, like Shelley said, there are people who really derive entertainment from the shopping process, and we see real strength today and in the future of retail going back to the brick and mortar stores. So even though COVID has been a difficult time, I think all in all, it's been a decent time for retail, and we really see retail end users continuing to grow in the near term.
Yeah, so I think all of us saw the effects of it up front, where shopping was virtually shut down, either because people didn't want to go out or stores were just closed. But it is interesting how fast, like you were saying, how fast it has been rebounding. So Robert, what have you seen on the installation side related to this? Have you seen an uptick? What are you seeing as far as what Joe's been talking about?
and this is definitely, not necessarily as much of a specialty market as some others, but it is somewhat. I would be curious too, Joe, when you say you see an increase, I mean, do you see that increase being more on the big, on the Walmarts, the Targets, these large retailer size? Do you see growth in more of your smaller retailers, or do you see the big guys just gobbling everybody up?
Yeah, I think that there's certainly um, more of a positive outlook for the larger retailers and the specialty retailers within that group. Department stores still, have their challenges. Shopping malls overall still have their challenges, but demand is out there. I think we all see in the news how there are empty shelves within retail environments, and there are challenges on the supply side. But overall, I think that things are very strong out there.
I mentioned to you a little bit earlier before we went live, and it was interesting. I had someone talking to me because if you go back, several years, we've all seen this extinction of the malls, because you go back several years, even when I was a kid, we'd go to the malls just to go to the movies or to go skate or whatever, but it was a place where, we would meet up with our friends and not necessarily even to shop, but just to run around and of course we saw that die. We saw the malls die. And I was just having a conversation with somebody the other day who said that their kids who are teenagers were now going back to the malls just to run around, to shop, to meet with their friends. I don't know if that's something that COVID spurred on, of them wanting to just get out of the house and find a place to go. I don't know if that's going to save the malls, but it was interesting listening to that story, and it made you start thinking, wow, I wonder if that'll help support a little bit of that anyway, because in my area, in the Dallas area, a few of the big ones that are, I think, have a lot of entertainment, the ice skating rinks, the cinemas, and so forth, they seem to be doing okay, but I think just okay, because I can remember 20 years you go through there and it was just so crowded, especially around Christmas time, and it's definitely not like that as much anymore.
Yeah, I think that the social aspect of malls continues to be one of the big draws. But in terms of, the retail presence, I think that the specialty shops in the smaller shopping lifestyle areas are tending to take the traffic away from the mall type setting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I know, Robert.
Well, and certainly as a self-proclaimed shopper, and I'm very excited for retail to come back because it is very social for a lot of people. And I don't think that I'm all that unique because it is a source of entertainment and socialization. And kind of, Joe, you mentioned that about lifestyle centers and those becoming a little bit more popular than the mall. And I'm sure that those have their own challenges when it comes to specifications of flooring and finishes, not to just jump into the nitty gritty, but you look at retailers trying to identify themselves with a specific decor package or a flooring choice. And Joe, maybe how much does that play into on the flooring side with, again, lifestyle centers where you're coming in directly off of the pavement, or you're bringing in weather with you, or, whatever you've got going on, versus a mall type scenario where you're just indoor, and some of the abuses that flooring takes in those type scenarios.
Yeah, there's certainly more of a challenge when you're coming off of the street into any store location. And so, walk-off areas become more important. But the nice thing about working with Resilient Products is, for the most part, they're ready to serve that type of environment. So it's more of a challenge from a maintenance standpoint than it is really from a durability standpoint.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I know, Robert, going back to what you were saying just a minute ago, my niece is that way with shopping malls. She's teenager, and they get out of high school, and that's her and all her friends. That's what they want to do, is head to the mall and just hang out. And I do think that was a big thing, back probably 80s, 90s. But it's kind of coming back, kind of like bell-bottom jeans, or some of these some of these trends that are headed back our way. Corduroy maybe, hopefully not, but but
So do you think, Gary, we'll see that green sculptured carpet come back?
Yeah, the sculptured shags will probably come back. Remember Canyon Paradise from Mohawk and some of those others? But yeah, it's
Oh my gosh.
what's funny. Yeah, I live in Florida, and what we see is a lot of the more boutique type malls where you've got maybe restaurants, some entertainment as far as like movie theaters and things like that, but then mostly specialty type stores, and they do have an attraction, and people will go to dinner and then they'll go out or go to lunch and then they'll go out and they'll hit these specialty type stores, and it's that actually they're usually fairly busy. It's not like the big indoor malls that we had years ago, and they may have a big draw like a Macy's or a Sears or something like that. Those that don't really seem to attract people, but if they're going out to look for something specific, they can go out and pick it out. And I think people are touchy-feely. They like to see what they get before they buy it, as opposed to ordering it online, and then when you get it, it's not exactly what you expected. So,
right.
That's a really good point, Gary. I think when back when e-commerce kind of started, everybody thought that Amazon could be successful without that touchy-feely. And certainly they have been successful, but even Amazon has brought certain brick and mortar applications to their system to add some touchy-feely to the process, where customers can possibly return merchandise, pick up merchandise, that type of thing. And most e-commerce heavy organizations have started to move in that direction. So I think you're absolutely right. There will always be a need for that personal contact on the retail side, even if e-commerce continues to be as important as it has been recently.
Yeah. So
Joe,
Joe,
go ahead, Seth.
Yeah, Joe. Let me ask you this. I guess as you've seen, obviously COVID hit, demand dropped, right, and then you've seen this kind of rebound happening already. I guess what are the driving factors of that, and how has supply chain impacted that? Because I know supply chain's been a huge issue, for the balance of this year, pretty much. So with this rebound happening, and then you have probably labor shortages and supply chain shortages and all that, how is that all playing together?
Yeah, I think that the supply chain issues are very difficult, and I think what we're gonna see is a lot of organizations are gonna kind of try to right size, and when I say right size, I mean instead of having 40,000 square foot stores and trying to fill the shelves on those 40,000 square feet, they might bring that down to 30,000 square feet. So I think that a lot of organizations feel like they can generate the same type of revenue numbers in a slightly smaller footprint, save money from a real estate investment standpoint, keep their stores full because of the supply chain issues that we have right now, and hopefully be able to operate the stores with less staff. So we're working in an environment where the cost structure has changed immensely. And so I think that there's a lot of effort being made on the behalf of retailers trying to make that profitability formula work again.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard of that. So you didn't call it downsizing, you called it right sizing?
Yeah, my term.
Okay.
Probably not an official term.
I didn't know if that was an industry. I was like I like that. It's not downsizing, it's right sizing.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's cool. Robert, you had something.
Yeah, I was just curious, Joe, because I mean, we're getting kind of toward the end of this year. We've been doing on commercial segment, and we've done it on everything from healthcare to, you name it, and just about every category, we saw a transition from where broadloom carpet into a lot of the resilient side. I know you had said in your in your history there you were heavily in the carpet. Now, of course, you're heavily on the resilient side, only because of where you're working, of course, but. And I've watched like Walmart. I mean, I watched Walmart go to some carpet in the, product side, of course, their aisleways were usually VCT, and they went from that, and then they started putting LVT everywhere, and now they're doing exposed concrete in a lot of stores. But yet, because I did a lot of the retail work, we did Macy's stores, and I mean, my gosh, Neiman Marcus, and and in those high-end stores, granted, I haven't been in them much lately because I don't go into the big retailers anymore. I must say I'm a big Amazon shopper, and when I'm traveling and on the road, I can order it here and it's home. But have you seen much of a transition in that? I'm under the high ends. I mean, when we would do Macy's, it was carpet over cushion in the product areas. Of course, the aisles may be something different. Are you seeing much transition there on maybe the let's say the Targets and the others, or what's kind of changes are you seeing there in the last several years?
Well, I don't think that there's necessarily been a large change away from carpet from those retailers that traditionally use it.
Gotcha.
Overall, Resilient continues to take floor space from carpet, and I think that that's more from a maintenance standpoint and from a product longevity standpoint. But in retail, one of the things that is refreshing about retail is they're constantly refreshing. So they're making their stores look new, up to date, and really the turnover rate on product and interior finishes in retail tends to be, I think, higher than it is in most commercial segments. So Resilient flooring gives a tremendous opportunity for design options. And I think that that's one of the reasons why it's gained so much traction in retail, because the designers can really take advantage of the medium to enhance the experience of their shoppers.
So they can draw the Shelleys into the store.
Well, it's welcome.
It doesn't take much.
Right, and the Garys,
Right.
So, yeah.
So Joe, just kind of thinking about that, like let's go back to spring of 2020 when, COVID happened, a lot of shutdown. Did retailers use that time for store planning and the psychology of stores and looking at their finishes and decor packages? Because we know those don't happen overnight, but identity is very important to a lot of these retailers. So were you involved in a lot of conversations with your contacts to, how do we use this time to our advantage? Can we refresh our stores? Are we looking at our decor packages? Did activity on your end pick up?
Yeah, not really. I mean, but it didn't decrease at all either. I think that the one thing that did happen is things kind of slowed down just because retailers lost their core operational capacity from an office standpoint. All their employees started going home and working from home. And so it just took a while for the machine to figure out how to operate smoothly in that new environment. But in terms of store planning going forward and the number of stores that we saw being renovated and built, if it wasn't for employee related issues specifically brought on because of COVID, I don't really think we would have noticed a slowdown at all.
Very good.
So, speaking of flooring types and some of the different things we've been discussing here, Joe, what do you see as far as market trends, installation challenges? Because retail really encompasses so much more than just shopping malls or even outdoor malls. It's grocery stores and it's all kinds of things. Best Buys and TJ Maxx's and all this stuff, right? So I guess we've talked some about flooring, but what are some of the big challenges that you guys see in that space that installers should be aware of, ways to get around them, solutions, things like that?
Yeah, generally, Seth, what we run into the most is compressed construction schedules in retail. Everybody is very, very interested in getting the front doors open so that revenue can start flowing in.
Sure.
And so many times, because of that, construction schedules get compressed, and because of that, issues occur. Steps maybe aren't taken to protect the integrity of the construction site from a flooring installation standpoint. Moisture testing can suffer if it's done too early. Buildings aren't enclosed. There is too much variation in the moisture testing that's taken. So what we find is it's just great to have different options to offer our customers so that we can react to the individual situation at hand. We would love to keep everything the same for our clients from store to store, but unfortunately the environment changes from store to store. So to have options available for the clients that can be pulled upon at any given notice is invaluable. And Taylor has really helped us in that regard, with providing us with adhesives that are appropriate for many different situations.
Yeah, so I think options.
Joe,
are
do you get
always-
involved with the actual installation process yourself, or are you guys pretty much selling to a particular agent who's handling all that?
No, we do get involved in the installation process, more from a we have customers who ask us to help them evaluate conditions on site, help them understand what they can or can't do to based on a situation. So we're heavily involved with a lot of our customers' installation processes.
And is the installation crisis affecting you there, as far as lack of installers?
No, not so much, because most of that, in terms of acquiring an installation contractor to participate in a project, is done through a general contractor. Right. So we don't specifically feel that.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, you talked about installation challenges, Seth. I mean, and Joe hit on it a little bit. I mean, and I think he was referring more so to the new construction aspect. We did a lot of this work, and typically, Joe, it would be for some dealer out of New York who had a chain of whatever, a Foot Locker, I mean, you name it, and so we did all of them in a fairly sizable radius. But what you're looking at, Seth, is a lot of times this type of work, it's night work. And you want to talk tight schedules, because it may be a situation. Let's say you're going into a Macy's, you're going to do the men's department tonight. That means they're moving fixtures off. You've got to demo what's down. You've got to prep the floor. You've got to get everything done, and so that they can move the fixtures back and open up the next morning. So you definitely are looking for an installer that you don't want the guy that suddenly runs into one little hiccup and he wants to call and sit there on the phone for 3 hours trying to get somebody to direct him on where to go or what to do next. Right. You need self-thinkers. You need guys that can basically come across whatever and still get it done so we can open up the next morning. So it is unique. And I think the other things we dealt with a lot is, depending on what you're taking up and versus what you're putting down, obviously in a retail environment like that, transitions is absolutely critical, meaning whatever the transition is, you got to make it disappear. So a lot of times, I mean, you want to talk ramping, floating, and suddenly again, we would have pre-construction meetings, but to make sure you try to get everything covered as best you can. But even then, it's that night when it's got to happen, you got to make it happen.
Well,
so I was just wondering how you guys
ADA
were doing with that, if you handled some of that, Joe.
Yeah. Sorry, what was that, Gary?
It's got to be ADA compliant. You just want to make certain that no one's going to be injured or anything like that.
Yeah.
So you have to be cautious. The problem with the flooring industry, we're always the last ones in. Like Joe said, everything gets compressed. So if the project's running behind schedule and over budget, we have to do it faster and cheaper for whatever reason. And it's always become an issue. Robert and CFI, they do a fantastic job of trying to bring young people into our industry. I hate to say this, I've been doing it for 51 years. As a young man, floor installers, guys wanted to get into the industry. You could make a good living. And for whatever reason, that people who work with their hands don't seem to, I don't know, we don't have the attraction that maybe other jobs would have. But at the end of the day, when you're working with your hands, you're installing a floor, you actually see what you accomplish. There's actually some pride in workmanship that goes along with it. And I think that's one of the things that groups like CFI are trying to instill, because if they can do that with the young people, we're going to end up with some really good mechanics coming into the industry.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a great point. And speaking of, so Joe, we've talked about new construction, right, and kind of the timeline there, and then Robert was talking about existing kind of renovation, the store closes at night and you demo and put it back in. I know COVID has changed a lot of store hours, right? So most Walmarts used to be 24-hour, and now a lot of them close at 10 or 11 p.m. And I'm not sure where Walgreens and CVS and these things are standing now, but there used to be a lot of retail work done even while the stores were open, right? A lot of that remodel work used to take place then. Is that still the case now? Do we still have a lot of stores that are open 24/7 and that work is happening in that occupied space?
Honestly, I can't really speak to that. We don't have a customer that operates 24/7 like that. And I think in a like a department store environment where they may have worked in certain areas and pushed departments out of the construction zone. But I think most of our work is done for remodel work is done off hours.
Got it. Okay. And Shelley or Robert, Gary, do you guys have any insight on kind of where that is today and what the changes there have been?
Well, Seth, I think you nailed it. I mean, everybody's really readjusted their consumer-facing hours and a little bit probably more flexibility when it comes to renovating some space. Joe, I'd be curious to know, because I know your customer influence is really on the end user side and kind of talking about construction challenges and installation related challenges. How critical is that relationship that you have as the flooring contact to your end user, and where do you get their buy-in or influence on doing the right thing when it comes to the installation, adhering to moisture, adhering to concrete requirements, all of those things? Where does that conversation take place? Is that with the end user, or is that with their general contractor, or is it a hybrid?
It kind of depends on the organization. Many times a customer will have project managers in the field. When I say a customer, meaning an end user, will have project managers in the field. We interface with them to try and make them more knowledgeable with regard to the situation. I mean, those guys have to try and be semi-experts with regard to everything that they touch, and it can be difficult. So, we see bringing our experience and knowledge to the table as being one of the value adds that we can bring to it. And so we interface a lot with those project managers, but in a case where a customer wouldn't have that level of oversight, we will interface directly with the general contractors or support the flooring contractors in their interaction with general contractors.
Great, thanks, Joe.
And Joe, I want to jump in here. We just had a question come in for you specifically, so I'm going to ask this, and we'll get this answer back out to this viewer. So the question is, Joe, with international shipping issues, high labor costs, and raw material costs, how do you handle the pressure of that inflation?
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing right now. But the nice thing is we're not in it alone, right? I mean, it's right. Clearly visible to every individual. I mean, I was surprised to see that on 60 Minutes on Sunday, they did a spot on the whole sea freight backup issue in the ports.
Right.
And that audience is just the general consumer. And so it's the situation has gotten so bad that even the general consumer is becoming educated on the situation. So it makes having conversations with our customers about those costs going up, installation costs going up, raw material costs going up, a little bit easier, because it's kind of expected. It's
Right.
not coming out of left field when we have these conversations. And unfortunately for our customers, a lot of their suppliers are having similar conversations with them. But it's a difficult time maintaining consistent pricing.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for that question. Do want to remind you, if you have questions at any point, feel free to text those in and we'll get those taken care of like we just did. So Gary, I think, did you have something you were about to say?
Yeah, I'd like to back up just a little bit. We've dealt with a few of these national department stores or national retailers that they're very proactive on moisture testing ahead of time because they've been burned with projects where they've had failures and things like that. There was one I dealt with that actually they monitored their temperature and humidity in the structure even pre-occupancy. And so this one in particular, the floor had been installed and then they had a failure, and their monitoring actually found where the failure occurred because the building lost HVAC control for about 2 weeks and the LVT had expanded. It was in the summertime in the south and got brutally hot inside there. So their monitoring and their checking ahead of time really made a world of difference. So it ended up going back to the landlord, who did not maintain the building under HVAC control, which was in their contract. Didn't go back to the flooring contractor, which was gratifying for me because I don't like to see the flooring contractor be burned for something that's not their fault.
Yeah, and
Hey, Joe.
Sorry, go ahead, Robert.
Sorry, Seth. I was just curious, like in your business right now, because we've kind of touched on, new construction and remodel. How much of it really is? I mean, is it half and half? Is it heavily on the remodel side? I mean, while I've done some new stores as well, I tell you, probably 80+% of what we have done over the years, my installation company, was all remodel.
Yeah,
what
I
are you
think
seeing?
well, and when I think of new construction, I think of a ground up construction. What we're seeing, because of one of the things that has happened in the last few years because of real estate availability and turnover in the retail segment, is a lot of customers move from location A to location B. And so what they're doing is they're building out or they're renovating a space that was previously occupied and then moving into that space. So I think I would say that probably 60 to 70% of what we do or what we get involved in is that type of a situation. And then the rest would be a renovation of an existing space to a new finish.
Yeah, that's surprising. I thought it would have been the other way around.
Yeah.
And again, mainly because that's mostly what I've been all involved in from the installation side. And Seth, you asked a question earlier about the differences in a facility or an establishment that's open 24 hours versus just a standard workday. Obviously,
Right.
A standard workday, we're going in at night. I mean, that's
Right.
why it's very key to have a lot of communication when you're doing that night work, because sometimes your GC may not even be there. Everything's been arranged. Those pre-scheduled meetings, and I tell you, for anyone looking at doing it, getting into this, the communication up front prior to that night they're going in is absolutely key. When the fixture guys are moving, when the demo starts, when the install, what time you got to be cleaned and prepped and walking out the door.
Yeah. It's like a
So
ballet
for a
almost.
24 hours, oh yeah. And even for a 24-hour store, most of the time we were still going in at night. And actually, believe me, we prefer it that way simply because the traffic is less. Even though they're open, the traffic is a fraction of what it would be during normal, business hours or what have you.
Right.
So a lot of times even then, however, we have been in situations where we're going in the day, they've moved everything out of a particular area, they try to rope it off and you're working in that area. But then again, you're looking at noise issues. You've got customers coming around you, kids. I mean, believe me, we try to go in when there's the least amount of traffic, even if it ends up working through the night.
Yeah. Yeah, and that makes sense.
Well, and I think on the installation side as well, I mean, a dynamic that a lot of people probably don't factor in, and Robert and Joe, you could probably speak to this, is the movement of fixtures. I'm thinking like drugstore chains or major mass merchants where you've got loaded shelves and you're actually physically moving those gondolas on skates or lifts or something like that. Where does that responsibility fall? Is that, a specialty that an installer can provide by having those additional services?
No,
They shouldn't.
No, typically, Shelley, speaking for myself and just about anybody I knew doing this type of business, we are professional floor covering installers. We don't want to touch those shelves. We definitely don't want to get anywhere near any merchandise. So typically there's people that come in and get all of that out of our way prior to us going in and starting demo or whatever we're going to do in that area. So
it's the way to do it.
Do you find that the same way,
Joe,
Joe?
you can answer that as well. But
yeah, there may be a coordinated effort there between the installation, the flooring installation contractor and the furniture people, but generally they're not the same person.
Yeah. So do you ever
and
get
typically,
asked?
Shelley, what happened? It all falls under the same contractor. So he'll try to just utilize everybody as best he can. But from an installer standpoint, most time we shy away. I won't say we haven't helped the GC out once in a while, rather than us just standing there because his fixture guys aren't getting it done quick enough, and we know we've got to get in, get out before 6 o'clock in the morning. But for the most part, that's a separate group.
That's funny because it's just a little bit different than my experience, because I've actually had some retailers that do rely on the flooring contractor to provide that additional service. So I don't know if that was just one unique customer or if that was, a niche that maybe, this particular flooring contractor had a specialty in or a sub crew that they were able to provide that as a value add. So thanks for
I'll
sharing.
tell you a quick secret, Shelley. We don't even like moving furniture in your home, much less your store.
I know.
Just don't like it. Call two men in a truck, right?
That's it.
So Joe, I know Robert probably as well, Gary, all of you guys have experience in this, but you had mentioned earlier the difference between a shopping mall and having all those stores enclosed in one space versus having each individual store have its own entry exit, and the challenges that brings. Let's talk just a little bit about that, as well as the variance in flooring products that you see, and what kind of installer does it take to really be successful in this industry, because I feel like retail has a lot of those kind of, I guess, just differences, right? You're installing a lot of different flooring types in a lot of different environments, and you've got, in grocery stores, you've got coolers and, freezers, and if you're in Minnesota, people are walking in with snow on their boots. And so how does that play together, and how big of a factor is a trained installer?
Joe, Gary, you want to hit it?
I think it's of the utmost importance. You don't want anybody learning on the job, right? So in those situations where you have all these different types of material that are being required on a particular job site, you're hopeful that the provider, if one person isn't capable of doing all those things, that he has several people to call on, each addressing their own area of expertise.
Right.
A lot of times, Seth, too, and at least, I still know crews that do this, and how much it's still the same. But, when we did a lot of that change stuff, like I said, oh my gosh, we did Ross and Foot Lockers. Best Buy, I forget all the, we did a lot of different places. And sometimes it might have been from a contractor in New York who I'm doing work for in California, Nevada, Texas. So even still today, I know with a lot of this stuff, I see crews that will literally travel. They know what the products are. They've installed them 5 different, million different times. And it's just a matter, they're in their truck or their truck and trailer, and they're going from city to city, state to state, installing different chains all over the place. And they're kind of used to, again, be it a mall access, independent access, because you're right. You're absolutely right. It was a great question, Seth. There again, that communication prior to the day of install is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
And knowing the products you're installing up front makes a world of difference. Like you said, if the crew's used to working with that same product, they're doing that same assembly from different spaces across the country. They're used to working with that product. They know exactly how it performs. You don't want to get onto a site and start out with a product that you're unfamiliar with and you don't know the criteria that goes along with that product.
Well,
Knowing
and you
your
get a
product up
GC
front.
too that develops a relationship with the installation team. So he's so comfortable with that team, they seem to be able to get it done every time. So he says, "Okay, I got a store in Nevada, I got a store here." I mean,
Right.
and a lot of times that GC will send them all over just because of the comfort level he gets within that crew.
Yeah, they need
So-
to have them done.
So I may this might be a question I shouldn't ask, but but here we go anyway. So when we're talking about these, compressed construction timelines and doing a lot of remodel work at night and all this, as an adhesive manufacturer, like I said, maybe I don't want the answer to this, but acclimation, right? How do you guys handle the acclimation of flooring and adhesive products that often require up to 72 hours before, and then keeping everything running during and then after? What does that look like in the retail world?
Akla who? What was that?
Yeah, exactly. Joey, do you have any insight there?
Well, I mean, really, the only thing that we can do, Seth, is just communicate the importance of that taking place, communicate the impact of that not taking place, and cross our fingers and hope that all of that communication is heeded, because if it isn't, there can be major problems.
Yeah, I can imagine. And a lot of times you have no control over that, so you're just showing up hoping that they've had it in a storeroom or somewhere at least close to the site it's going to be installed. So,
Right.
Again, like I said, maybe I don't want the answer. We did have another question
fingers
come
crossed.
in. Yeah, we did have another question come in. Let me get this one, and I think probably this is to Joe, but it wasn't specific. So we'll start with you, Joe. Which subsegments of retail are being affected today, and where is their growth and decline?
I think that it's easier to identify the segments that are doing quite well, and those are the building materials industry, grocery, fast food, because we're still living in a different environment where people are doing more things at home. They want to get out, but we're still not back to a normal point of view where you can do whatever you want and move as freely as you might like. So those people are continuing to benefit. I guess if there was one area of retail that is probably suffering, it would be the service, the people who provide maybe a massage center, those places where you would go to have some sort of a service provided, where it might be uncomfortable because of physical proximity.
Right.
That space has suffered, and that's one of the reasons why the consumer demand for material goods has soared, because they've taken funds that used to go to those services and reallocated them to goods. So I would say if any portion of the market was suffering more than another, it would be the service segment.
And then the two-part, so that was kind of part one of this question. The second part was, is labor or a lack of workers affecting retail growth? That might be a tricky question, but there it is.
I think it is going into the decision-making process. As I said before, I think retailers are concerned with the number of outlets that they're trying to staff. They may be more encouraged to make decisions on underperforming stores, to reallocate labor to better performing stores. So I think that there's more of a balancing act taking place with regard to labor, and probably some new decisions being made because of the situation with labor. So I do believe it's having an impact.
Okay.
Let me ask you this, Joe. You know, obviously with the labor shortage, you know, a lot of times, a lot of manufacturers, you know, the big guys are trying to develop products that actually are less labor intensive, I guess, for lack of a better word. Do you think you see any of your end users or your clients having any mindset of that, of like, yeah, but you know, that ceramic tile, it takes, you know, I can only get X amount in if I go with an LVP, although I don't think anybody's doing ceramic tile in stores anymore. But do you see any thinking like that at all?
I think that most of that thinking is done, you know, from a cost standpoint.
Yeah.
This finish installed versus that finish, and clearly labor cost is part of that equation.
Sure.
So I think that that's where those decisions are being made.
That's interesting.
So let's kind of change gears just briefly here. We're closing in on it. So I want to talk a little bit about what do we see coming up. What's the future of the retail market look like? Not just through the balance of 2021, because that's what, a month and a half-ish, but as we head into 2022, what are the big things to look out for? Is this a growing segment, a shrinking segment? Where is the opportunity? So Joe, do you mind kind of giving us your perspective first on that?
We're very excited about the future of retail. Like I said in my introduction, it's very important to our business. And anytime there's challenges in the industry, there's also tremendous opportunity because challenges are disruptive, and people are looking to solve problems. And when they're looking to solve problems, they're looking for people to help them solve problems. So I'm extremely bullish on what the future holds in 2022, 2023. You know, retail is always going to be strong, and it may take different shapes and forms depending on trends, but it's an area of the business that we always feel is going to have tremendous opportunity.
Okay, Shelley, any thoughts there? Anything you've heard?
Music to my ears. Very well said. In every challenge is an opportunity, and I think whether this time gives retailers an opportunity to, Joe, as you said, rethink their footprint, rethink their go-to-market strategy, rethink their store decor, because that actually plays a very big part of, you know, the satisfaction of retail environments is the store decor package. So I think we're going to see a lot of retailers spending more time learning how to attract those buyers back into their brick and mortar stores. We've all embraced and we all love e-commerce, but it's not the end all be all for a variety of different reasons. So I'm glad, Joe, that we're aligned and kind of seeing the same things with tips and trends of the retail segment.
Yeah.
Yep, and that will keep Shelley the shopper happy. Robert, have you heard anything about the retail market? What's your take on it? Where's it headed?
Well, you know, my feeling is, and I've seen this as far as, you know, there's two pieces to this. And so I think the ones that are going to be strong and surviving are the ones that are kind of going and have been going into kind of more of a hybrid model. You know, you look at Walmart. Walmart, of course, has retail stores all over the country, but they are, you know, I think they're probably the strongest, in my opinion, the strongest competitor against an Amazon because they've got such a strong online presence as well. I think, you know, these other big guys, I think they can't ignore the Amazon. I think they're going to have to do both because if you look at it, you know, you can order from Walmart and pick up today. So I think a lot of those retail stores do have an advantage there. But I will say, you know, interesting, we had there was a young lady. When I say young, I think she was 19, 20 years old. She was actually the daughter of the chairman who was residing and getting an award. So she came to the board meeting I was at in San Antonio with WFCA. And it was interesting because she got vocal on a couple of things. And we were doing a kind of a future look of the industry and forth. And it would be interesting, say, if we had somebody on this call that was 19, 20, because what she was saying is, like Shelley, and I know so many other, you know, women who their outing is, they'll get 3 or 4 of them together, and they'll go to lunch, and they'll go to, the mall, or not necessarily the mall, but to this store and that store, and it's just kind of a day out for them. As where this younger girl, she seemed to think that, oh, no, we don't do that. We're not going to do that. Shopping is this. I can go online. I can do this. I can see the pictures. So it'd be interesting to see, where somebody like Shelley is, thank God for not taking my retail store. If someone in their 18 to 20 category would say, I don't care if you're there next week or not. It'd be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think there's always, like Gary said a long time ago, though, too, I think there's always that, at least that segment of us that want to go and try something on, or want to see it in person and feel that fabric and, know what that shoe looks like and all of that. I know I'm guilty of that myself some, you just can't ever know what you're going to get.
Well, I'm hearing
Amazon,
that there's going to be technology that you can actually touch and feel a texture from this and that. I mean, I'm hearing this crazy technology that could drastically change things in the future. So we'll see.
Well, I think we're probably several years off from that still, so we'll keep our fingers crossed on that front. But
so you're safe for a while, Shelley.
Yep. But any other thoughts on kind of where we're headed? Where's the areas of opportunity, for either a flooring installer or retailer watching? Joe, what would you kind of say are the big areas to look out for in your opinion?
Well, I just think that it's important to understand that you need to bring value to that end user. You need to be able to not only provide product, but you need to be able to provide the knowledge that supports the product, both before the installation, during the installation, and after the installation. And because the product itself, unfortunately, there's a lot of product that looks the same out there, and it's the individuals that are bringing the product that make the difference. So
Right.
Just understand that you're selling a relationship as well as a product, and it may be even more important than the product.
Yeah,
It's true.
yeah, it's very true.
Agree.
Robert, any kind of final thoughts or advice for those watching?
The only thing I'd say, and again, being an installer, and doing this type of work, and of course, I'm always thinking of those guys. You've got a lot of installers, I think, that would be very good at this type of work. And I will say that, there's good money in this type of work. I won't say you can name your price or anything like that, but, working for your average retailer and dealer, and I don't want to pull those guys away. But you've heard Joe and everybody talk. This typically is not going through your average dealer or retailer. It's usually going to a GC who finds his installation company that he's comfortable with, and that's who he uses. Now, sometimes those guys are actually forced to go through a retailer who then gets another cut and then goes to the contractor. So I'd say if you're an installer and you would be interested in getting into this type of work, that you need to seek those contractors that are doing this, whether they're in your area or other areas. And if you search, you can usually find them out, because they're, again, developing relationships with those contractors. Your margins will be a little bit better. There's good money to be made there, and that's about the only thing I have to say for guys that are looking at getting in this type of business, Seth.
Very good. Gary, any thoughts?
You got to know your product. You got to know your end user. So you look at what the product is the demands or the type of stresses are going to be put on that floor. Try to know your products before you start. Try to deliver your customer the best value that they possibly can. Obviously, we're dealing with designers in many cases. Most of this is not going to be negotiated work. It's all going to be bid work. So they've already made their selections and things like that. But you do have to know your product before you get started. And getting the right crews out there, crews that know what they're doing, like Robert said. You want to have an experienced crew on job site. So if it's 2 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday and you're trying to get something completed so they can be opened up again the next morning, you have to have a crew that's going to be able to get everything completed. They're going to have to be able to anticipate what they're going to run into and give a solution very quickly and make certain that job is completed.
And Shelley, we'll kind of wrap it up here with you. What would you say? Just kind of final words of wisdom for those watching.
Wow, thanks. No pressure there. So I would just say that it's all about partnerships and communication. Joe said it many times, and I know that's our tagline, is to be a partner and with you every step, and that's very important, especially in retail. So again, appreciate all of the information sharing that we've had today, because it just really solidifies the point that partnerships, whether you're in the flooring business or in any business or just life in general, that's where you're going to be most successful.
Yep, definitely true. And it's, every one of these sessions we do, I think we end with that. That's one of the most important things, is relationships, communication, clear expectations. And it sounds like this is no different. Just the segment itself has its own uniqueness. So I just want to thank all of you guys for joining. Robert, thank you for jumping in here with us. Shelley, really appreciate your time. As always, Gary, thanks for being here with me in studio and not making me go this alone. And Joe, seriously special thank you to you and TAJ Flooring for your time today. We know how valuable time is in our world. So just thank you all for joining. Do want to just say thank you to all of our viewers again, and wish you a happy Thanksgiving. I do want to remind you, please go on, subscribe to our newsletter. Those come out once a month. Watch our next Taylor Time Live. It's going to be in December, the third Tuesday, and it's going to be an exciting one. Stay tuned for information on that. Follow us on social media. Check out our website and app. And just remember, at Taylor Adhesives, we're with you every step.